Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Haunted Tales. Tonight, we journey into the heart of the oldest mountains in America, where the fog clings to the hollows and the trees seem to whisper of things long forgotten. The Appalachian wilderness has held its secrets for centuries. Tales of vanished souls, restless spirits, and crimes that time itself refuses to bury. Here, reason falters, and the unexplained takes root in the dark. In the next hour, you'll hear 10 true accounts drawn from the back roads and black valleys of Appalachia. Stories born in isolation, carved into legend and whispered by those who swore they'd never speak of them again. These are not campfire stories. They are confessions, police reports, and last words carried by the wind. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Haunted Tales for nightly journeys into true horror that will keep you awake long after the screen goes dark. Turn on that notification bell, because the next time the darkness calls, you'll want to be ready to listen. Now, take a deep breath and step with us into the Appalachian wilds, where civilization fades, the roads turn to shadows, and something ancient still watches from the trees. Route 250 winds through the dense heart of Randolph County, West Virginia, a road swallowed by pine and fog. For most travelers, it's a sleepy, scenic route between Huttonsville and Elkins. But locals will tell you, don't drive it after midnight in the rain. The first police report about the Weeping Woman came in the spring of 1963. A trucker named Harold Benton was hauling timber north when he radioed dispatch, his voice breaking through static. He said he'd seen a woman standing in the road, soaked to the bone, wearing what looked like a white dress. When he pulled over to help, she vanished. His headlights just passed through her. Benton's rig was found 2 miles down the road, engine running, driver's side door open. Benton himself was discovered the next morning, still alive but in shock, huddled against the guardrail, muttering over and over. She kept crying. She kept crying, and I couldn't find her face. The police chalked it up to exhaustion and weather hallucination. But the reports didn't stop. Over the next 5 decades, nearly a dozen similar calls came from the same 2-mile stretch. Always in heavy rain, always around midnight, always the same description. A woman in a torn white gown weeping beside the road. Locals say her name was Lydia Harrow, a bride-to-be from the nearby town of Beverly. The story goes that on the night of her wedding rehearsal, a flash flood swept through the valley. Her fiancé's car was washed off the bridge, his body never found. Lydia was last seen running into the storm, calling his name, her gown trailing in the mud. They found her body 3 days later, pinned beneath a fallen tree downstream. They buried her in the old churchyard near Huttonsville, but people say she never left Route 250. She's still looking for him. Truckers call that stretch the Widow's Mile. Some mark it on their maps. They know better than to stop when they see a figure on the shoulder. One of the most chilling accounts came in 1994. A long-haul driver named Donnie Rhodes was cutting through during a thunderstorm. His CB radio started crackling, not static, but a woman's voice, faint, almost drowned by the rain. She said, "Help me. Please, he's still out there." Donnie slowed the rig, scanning the roadside with his high beams. That's when he saw her. Barefoot, drenched, her dress clinging to her body. She turned toward him, lifting one trembling hand. He stopped, opened the cab door. The rain hit him like nails, but when he stepped down, there was no one, only wet footprints leading toward the woods and fading halfway into the ditch. 2 weeks later, Donnie's truck was found abandoned in a pull-off near the same spot. His wallet was still in the seat, engine off, headlights drained. Search teams scoured the area for days before finding him sitting under a tree, staring at the road. When they asked what happened, he whispered, "She knocked on my window. I looked in the mirror and she was sitting in the back seat." Donnie never drove again. He died 6 months later from heart failure. The coroner's note mentioned an unusual detail. His fingernails were packed with soil and pine needles, as if he'd been clawing at the ground. In 2003, the West Virginia State Police finally acknowledged what locals already believed. In a leaked memo, troopers were advised not to respond to visual apparitions or roadside disturbances near mile marker 187 unless accompanied by a secondary unit. The reason was never officially stated, but an anonymous officer later admitted to a Charleston journalist that dash cam footage existed, footage that showed a white shape materializing on the shoulder, moving toward the cruiser and then vanishing in a burst of static before the feed cut out. The footage was never released. Today, Route 250 remains active. It's a shortcut for night truckers, a scenic drive for the curious, and a graveyard for the unlucky. Every year, a few new stories surface. A motorist slams the brakes for a woman who isn't there. A lone traveler reports soft crying through a closed window. One 911 call from 2017 recorded a woman sobbing in the background, though the driver insisted he was alone. Locals say that if you hear her crying, keep driving. Don't slow down. Don't look back, because if you do, she might think you're him, and she'll finally stop waiting. Narrator, quiet, solemn tone. They say the mountains hold on to sorrow. Like fog in the hollows, it never really burns off. The weeping woman still walks Route 250 when the rain begins to fall. So if you ever find yourself driving that stretch, and the storm thickens around you, remember, the figure you see through the rain might not need saving. It might just be waiting for someone to notice, and once you do, she'll never let you leave that road alone. If you drive Route 250 today, you'll notice how the forest seems to close in tighter than it should. The trees lean over the guardrails like silent mourners. Even on clear nights, mist curls along the asphalt as though the earth is still breathing out the storm that took her. Locals say the air always smells like rain there, even when the sky is empty. For decades, the story of the weeping woman lingered mostly as a cautionary tale, something parents told their teenage drivers. But in 2012, a strange pattern reawakened the legend. That autumn, a string of accidents occurred within the same quarter-mile radius. All single-vehicle crashes, all drivers who claimed, before losing control, to have swerved for a woman in white. The first was a college student from Fairmont named Emily Ward, returning home after a late shift. She called her boyfriend at 12:47 a.m., her voice trembling. "There's someone on the road. I think she's hurt. I'm gonna stop." Then, silence. Her car was found nose down in a ravine 30 yards from the pavement, airbags deployed, headlights still on. Emily survived with only minor injuries, but her statement the next morning sent chills through the investigators. She told police she saw a drenched woman waving frantically in the middle of the lane. Emily slowed, rolled down the window, and the woman leaned close enough for the rain to hit her face. "She looked straight through me," Emily said, "like she was staring at something behind me." And then her mouth opened, but she didn't scream. It was like she was trying to breathe water. Emily said the woman's eyes were milky, and her skin dripped, even though it wasn't raining. The trooper listening to her account, Sergeant Keller, reportedly ended the interview early, his face pale. When another officer asked what was wrong, Keller said quietly, "That's word for word what Benton said in '63. Locals began avoiding the stretch altogether. The county tried posting additional signage and even added new guardrails, but the reports kept coming. Each storm brought fresh sightings, sometimes weeks apart, sometimes the very next night. In 2016, a retired road maintenance worker named Earl Matthews gave an interview to a regional podcast. He said he'd seen her twice, once when he was 19, and again nearly 40 years later. The first time he was with two other crewmen patching asphalt during a late spring downpour. They'd parked their truck under the bridge for shelter when they saw a pale figure drifting down the embankment. "At first we thought it was fog catching light from the truck," Earl said, "but then she started moving uphill against the rain. I remember hearing her crying, faint, like when you hear a baby through static on the radio. We just stood there, didn't move. Then she stopped, looked right at us, and I swear to God, the rain started falling sideways. The crew fled, leaving their equipment behind. When they returned the next morning, they found the fresh asphalt had hardened with streaks across it, like something had dragged its fingers through the wet tar." The second sighting came in 2014, after Earl's retirement. He'd been driving home from Elkins, heavy storm ahead, when he saw her again. Same white dress, same motionless figure by the rail. "He didn't stop this time. I just kept driving," he said. "But the thing is, every time the lightning flashed, she was closer. Like she didn't walk, she just skipped forward between the flashes." Earl said when he finally passed the curb, the crying followed him in the wind for miles. Police dispatchers have a nickname for her now, Unit 17's Ghost. In radio chatter, it's code for false alarm. But the older officers never respond alone. In 2019, a body camera clip surfaced briefly on an online forum before being removed. The footage was supposedly taken by a rookie trooper investigating an abandoned vehicle along Route 250 during a thunderstorm. The video showed his flashlight beam sweeping the guardrail and catching what looked like a translucent figure standing in the runoff, arms reaching upward. The trooper shouted, stumbled backward, and the clip cut out. The department never confirmed its authenticity, but the voice that echoed just before the feed ended, faint, distorted, seemed to whisper, "He's still out there." Fog Hollow sits somewhere between two forgotten mining towns off Old Route 15 in eastern Kentucky. The road curves like a scar through the hills, narrow and cracked, its shoulders swallowed by forest. Locals say the fog there doesn't roll in like normal mist. It breathes. It exhales from the ground, thick and silver, rising until it swallows the trees whole. At night, headlights vanish into it, and sound travels wrong, stretching and twisting until even your own engine feels far away. Few drive it after sundown. Those who do tell stories they wish they hadn't. The first record came from a coal hauler named Jim Hall, 1921, who kept a small leather diary in his truck cab. He wrote that something had been crawling up out of the fog near the abandoned Cinder Ridge mine. He never saw it clearly, but he described the shape as man-like, but folded wrong, walking on hands and feet at once, dragging itself like it remembered how to walk but forgot it wasn't supposed to. He claimed it left prints, not of shoes, but long hand-shaped impressions in the mud. His last entry read, "It followed me to the ridge. It wants to come inside." He disappeared 2 days later. They found his truck at the base of the hill, still running, with the door torn off. The road workers buried the story along with him. For decades, the mine sat empty, its shaft sealed with rusted iron and the forest growing over it like scar tissue. But in 1979, the fog started changing. People said it glowed faintly as if something beneath it gave off light. Hunters began hearing knocking sounds from underground, like metal striking stone, and dogs refused to enter the valley. One group of night fishermen from the nearby lake swore they saw a shape crawling through the fog along the shoreline, pale and slick as though coated in ash. When they shined their flashlights toward it, it froze, then vanished in a blink, leaving nothing but a sound like someone sucking in breath through teeth. Then came the accident in '94. A man named Dennis Porter, long-haul trucker, crashed his rig on that stretch at 2:17 a.m. When the rescue crew arrived, they found the cab empty, seatbelt cut clean through, windshield broken outward. They followed a trail of blood and muddy handprints down toward the hollow. Halfway down, the print stopped. The fog was so thick they could barely see their boots. One rescuer said he felt something move beside him. Not a person, but the weight of something on all fours, keeping pace. When they turned the flashlights, there was nothing, but the sound of breathing filled the mist. Heavy, wet, slow. They called off the search at dawn. Dennis Porter's body was never found. Locals built their own theories. Some said it was a mutated miner, trapped underground after a collapse, warped by years of gas and darkness. Others whispered it wasn't human at all, that the mine had opened something older. Fog Hollow, after all, sits on ground riddled with limestone caves and abandoned shafts, a labyrinth beneath the surface. If something was down there, it had miles of tunnels to move through, unseen. By 2010, new reports started pouring in from night travelers. Several truckers described handprints of soot appearing on their trailers after driving through the fog. Smeared streaks shaped like fingers, always too long, always too many. One driver claimed he saw something crawling beside his rig as he climbed the hill. Not running, crawling, keeping perfect speed at 60 miles per hour. He said its skin reflected the headlights like wet clay. When he finally looked forward again, it was already gone. He quit hauling routes through Kentucky the next week. A family passing through in 2018 made a 911 call at 3:09 a.m. The father's voice shook as he said something had hit their minivan. The dispatcher asked if it was an animal. The man said no. He said it stood up. The line went silent for 22 seconds, and then the mother's voice came through whispering, "It's still out there. It's in the fog. When police arrived, the vehicle was empty, doors open, headlights pointed into the trees. They found drag marks that ended abruptly a few feet from the tree line, as if the forest itself had swallowed them. The few who've seen it and lived say the creature isn't loud. It doesn't snarl or roar. It just moves, slowly, deliberately, with a sound like skin brushing against damp stone. Some say it mimics voices now. Hunters hear their own names whispered from the fog, called in tones that almost sound right, almost. Others say if you stop your engine and listen, you'll hear knocking beneath your tires, as though something underneath is waiting to crawl out. One night, a young mechanic named Luke, driving home from Hazard after a late shift, broke down near the hollow. His engine died just as the fog rolled in, dense and alive, pressing against the glass. He got out to check the hood, flashlight trembling in his hand. The world was white and silent. He could hear his own heartbeat, feel the damp air sticking to his skin. Then, from somewhere close, too close, came the sound of hands slapping wet ground. Slow, uneven, crawling toward him. He froze. The fog shifted. Between the curtains of white, he saw a shape unfolding from the ground. Pale, jointed wrong, arms too long, head tilted sideways as if listening. Its mouth opened like a crack in stone. No sound at first, then a rasp like wind through a mine shaft. Luke dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the road, light spinning, and for an instant he saw its face. It had no eyes, just hollows filled with mist. He ran. Never stopped until he reached the next gas station 5 miles away. They said when he stumbled in, he was shaking so bad he couldn't speak for 10 minutes. His clothes smelled like coal dust and wet earth. When he finally found his voice, all he said was, "It knew my name." Fog Hollow still lives up to its name. On maps, it's barely marked. A forgotten stretch where GPS fails and radios die in static. Locals swear if you drive it after midnight, you'll see lights flickering in the mist, like lanterns swinging in tunnels that no longer exist. Some think it's just swamp gas. Others believe the thing in Fog Hollow never stopped crawling, that it's searching for the way back down, for the mine that birthed it. But sometimes, when the fog gets thick enough, you can hear the knocking again, deep under the asphalt, slow and patient, like something waiting for the road above to crack open just wide enough to let it through. And when it finally does, it won't crawl anymore. It'll stand, and it'll start walking toward the nearest headlights. The old miners used to say the earth remembers everything that bleeds into it. Fog Hollow remembers. It holds sound and sorrow the way lungs hold air, releasing both when the ground grows cold enough. That's what people claim when they try to explain why the fog never leaves, even when the wind moves through. Even when the sun burns white over the ridges, the hollow still steams with breath that isn't weather. Some say it's the mine breathing back, still exhaling from the day it collapsed. Others believe it's the creature itself, buried too long, refusing to die, pushing its warmth into the mist so the world won't forget it. A few months after Luke's encounter, a survey team from the Kentucky Geological Department came to inspect the area. Their reports were meant to be routine, seismic activity checks before a proposed development nearby. 3 men went down the old access road that cuts behind the hollow. Only 2 came back. The survivor, a technician named Myers, was found walking barefoot along the highway at dawn, his clothes soaked through with condensation. He kept saying the same words over and over. It's not fog. It's dust. It's from the walls. They found his partner's helmet deep in the trees, visor cracked, inside smeared with gray residue like powdered stone. The official report called it a misadventure caused by disorientation and exposure. Locals knew better. They said the fog had called them in. Later that year, a park ranger named Linda Cross was assigned to patrol the area after multiple trespassing complaints. She carried a body cam, the kind with motion activation. The footage was found months later in her abandoned SUV, battery drained but memory intact. It begins with her walking through the hollow, fog wrapping around her like gauze. She's speaking into her mic, calm, describing the temperature drop, visibility near zero. Then a thud. Something falls behind her. She turns, camera shaking, light cutting through gray soup. At the edge of the frame, something crouches low, like a person trying to hide. She calls out, thinking it's a lost hiker. No reply. She moves closer, her breath loud in the speaker. The shape unfolds, smooth, slow, taller than any person should be when it straightens. For a moment it looks like a man in a miner's suit, but the suit seems to be part of its skin, the fabric fused to flesh. Then the lens catches movement beneath the surface, a ripple, like something crawling. They say Boone Mountain has its own kind of darkness, not the kind that comes when the sun falls behind the hills, but a heavier one that settles in the bones of the mountain itself. The locals learned long ago that the light dies early there. By late afternoon, the shadows grow thick and blue, and the air turns colder, even in midsummer. The mountain is old, scarred with switchback roads and abandoned coal paths that snake through woods where trees grow too close together, their trunks blackened by decades of soot. The road that cuts through it, State Route 91, has been the site of more wrecks than any other stretch of highway in Carter County. Most of those wrecks share the same story: blinding headlights in the mirror, a roaring engine behind, and then nothing. Just the sound of skidding tires and the crash of metal twisting against stone. Truckers call it the Black Charger, though those who've seen it up close swear it isn't a car at all. It's a truck, a jet black semi with no license plate, no company logo, just a matte body that seems to swallow light instead of reflecting it. The story goes back decades to a driver named Earl Pritchard who worked the coal routes in the late 1950s. Earl was known for running loads faster than anyone else, cutting through the mountain at night to make up time. They found his rig at the bottom of a ravine in 1957. Cab crushed, cargo scattered across the rocks. His body was never recovered. Some said the brakes failed. Others whispered he'd been run off the road by another truck with no lights, no driver, just a low hum that filled the valley moments before the crash. The first recorded sighting came almost 15 years later, in the early 70s. A state trooper named Dan Keene was patrolling Route 91 near midnight when he spotted taillights ahead, bright red dots moving faster than they should have been. He radioed in pursuit but got only static. The dashcam recovered later showed his cruiser accelerating, the engine straining. Then, through the windshield, two pale headlights appeared in the rear view. Too close, too sudden. Keene's breathing quickened. He tried to radio again, shouting coordinates, but the feed cut out. The footage flickered once more, and in a single frozen frame you could see it. The outline of a black truck, grille gleaming, bearing down without sound. The next morning, Keene's car was found half submerged in the creek below the ridge. He survived with broken ribs, but refused to speak about what happened. He resigned 2 weeks later. Locals said he never drove that road again. Years passed, but the sightings didn't stop. Every story matched. The black truck appears from nowhere, tailing drivers through the sharp turns, its engine roaring but its tires making no sound. Sometimes the radio dies. Sometimes the fog rolls in thick enough that the tail lights vanish, leaving only the low hum echoing off the trees. A trucker named Maggie Holt told her husband over CB that she'd picked up a set of headlights behind her near the summit. The other drivers listened as her voice grew tense. She said the truck was inches from her bumper, matching every move. Then came the squeal of metal, a scream and silence. They found her rig 20 feet off the road, still idling, headlights on, trailer door open. Maggie was gone. In the dirt beside the truck, investigators found deep tire marks, but only one set. The highway crew repaved that stretch a few years back, and during the work they dug up an old length of metal buried beneath the asphalt. It was charred, fused to the rock, and shaped like part of a truck's frame. When they brought it to the depot, it was still warm, even after years underground. They sent it for testing, but the results never came back. One of the workers later claimed the piece was gone, vanished overnight. He swore he heard the sound of a diesel engine outside his house that same night, long after midnight, idling low and steady, even though he lived miles from the mountain. People started to talk about the black truck as if it were alive. Some believed it was Earl's spirit still running his last route, trapped in an endless loop between life and death. Others said it wasn't Earl at all, that the mountain had taken his soul, twisted it into something mechanical, something bound to the asphalt that cut across its heart. A few said the truck comes for anyone who disrespects the road, speeding, littering, or honking through the switchbacks at night. The mountain, they said, demands silence. In 2006, a team of paranormal investigators tried to capture footage for a documentary. They parked near the ridge where most sightings occur, rigged cameras along the guardrail, and waited. Around 3 a.m., one camera picked up distant headlights weaving through the trees. At first, it looked like another vehicle taking the curve until the light cut out entirely, leaving total darkness. The audio recorder picked up a low vibration, like an approaching engine, followed by a rush of wind so strong it knocked over one of their tripods. Then a sound, metallic, drawn out like steel bending. The next morning, their equipment was found scattered across the road. One camera had melted slightly along its side. The footage that survived showed only one clear frame, two blinding white lights, and something massive, shapeless, pressing against the lens. Since then, the black truck has become a local taboo. Truckers say its horn is what you hear first, a long, hollow wail that seems to come from every direction at once. Some who've heard it claim the temperature drops instantly, frost forming along their dashboards even in summer. Others say the headlights reflect nothing. No road, no trees, just darkness, like they're shining into a void. Once you see it, you can't outrun it. It follows you through every bend until the lights disappear, leaving behind the faint smell of diesel and burnt rubber. One winter night, a father and his teenage son were driving through Boone Mountain after visiting family. They'd heard the stories, but didn't believe them. Around the third turn, the son noticed a pair of lights behind them, distant, low, moving fast. The father checked his mirror, frowned, and muttered something about an aggressive driver. But when he tapped the gas, the lights closed in instantly. They filled the mirror, so bright they turned the inside of the car white. Then the horn blared. The boy screamed. The father swerved to the shoulder, tires kicking gravel. But when the car stopped, the road was empty. The lights were gone. So was the sound. Only the engine idled, and the smell of diesel hung thick in the cold air. When they looked behind, they saw something carved into the frost of their rear window. 3 letters traced by a finger. EP, no one drives Boone Mountain at night anymore if they can help it. Truckers reroute through Johnson City or wait until dawn. The fog still clings to the ridge, and on windless nights, the sound of an engine hums low through the valley, steady, patient, circling. Sometimes headlights appear far off down the curve, glowing white, sliding closer with impossible speed, only to vanish again just before the bend. They say if you stop on that road and listen, you can still hear the clatter of chains and the hiss of brakes from a wreck that never stops happening, over and over, buried deep in the mountain's dark heart. And if you wait too long, you'll see 2 lights bloom behind you, blinding too close. By the time you realize they're not reflections, it's already too late, because the black truck doesn't chase you. It waits, hidden in the turn, idling in the fog, until your headlights meet its own. And then the mountain takes what it's owed. When winter gave way to spring, the rains came hard across Boone Mountain, carving trenches into the slopes, loosening stones that had been buried since the mines shut down. Locals said the mountain was restless again. The blacktop on Route 91 cracked in long, thin veins, as if something beneath it were pushing upward, testing the surface. Each storm brought new wrecks, single-car rollovers, trucks jackknifed against the guardrail, drivers who swore they'd seen lights behind them right before losing control. The county blamed slick roads. The locals blamed the truck. A mechanic named Curtis Dempsey owned the only tow service within 30 miles. He'd been pulling wrecks off that mountain for 20 years and said he'd seen everything that road could do to a man. One April night, he got a call about a stranded vehicle near the Boone switchback. The driver, a woman passing through from North Carolina, reported a black semi that had appeared out of nowhere before her car shut off completely. By the time Curtis arrived, fog had rolled in thick as wool, headlights scattering uselessly into white nothing. He found her car on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking, the engine dead. The woman sat inside, trembling. The window cracked only an inch. When he asked what happened, she said the truck had pulled alongside her, close enough for her to see the rivets along its door, but the cab was empty. No driver, no shadow, just the wheel turning on its own. She said it kept pace with her for a mile before sliding ahead and vanishing into the fog. Then her car stalled. Curtis hooked up the tow line quick, uneasy in the quiet. He said later the air smelled wrong, sharp, like overheated metal, and his flashlight beam kept catching on something behind the mist, a dull shape that shifted when he moved. When he climbed into his cab to leave, he saw fingerprints in the condensation on his rear window. Not 5, but 10. 2 sets of hands pressed side by side, as though someone had leaned against the glass from the outside, watching. The hills around Flatwoods are quiet in the wrong kind of way. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears, that swallows footsteps and smothers breath. Locals say the trees there hum after dark, not from the wind, but from something older, something that's been listening longer than anyone's been alive. Flatwoods has always carried stories like seeds in its soil, strange lights, sudden sickness, voices echoing from the woods long after everyone's gone home. Most of the world remembers the Flatwoods Monster from the 1950s, the story that turned into old black and white newspaper clippings and pulp radio drama. But the locals know that wasn't the end of it. The real horror didn't come from the sky. It came from the trees. It began again almost 70 years later, in early autumn, when the first chill crept into the hollers. A hunter named Rick Dobson set up his camp just off the old oil road near Sutton Lake. He told his wife over the phone he'd be home by Sunday. He never came back. When search teams found his camp 2 days later, everything was there. Tent still zipped, rifle leaning against a stump, flashlight drained beside an untouched coffee cup. The ground around the camp was covered in small holes, as if something had pressed hundreds of narrow points into the soil, deep and perfect, spiraling outward in a wide circle. At the center of that circle was a single feather, long, black, and oily to the touch. A few nights later, a woman named Tara Jennings called the sheriff's office from her farmhouse 2 miles away. She said she heard someone whistling near her barn around midnight. Not a tune exactly, but a slow, deliberate rise and fall, like someone trying to mimic bird song but getting it wrong. When deputies arrived, they found her animals pressed against the far wall of the barn, eyes wide, froth drying on their mouths. The fence out back had been bent inward, like something heavy had leaned over it. Tara kept repeating the same thing through tears. It wasn't a person. People breathed between notes. The sound came again the next night. Other neighbors heard it too, a low, reedy whistle echoing through the valley. Sometimes it drifted. Sometimes it seemed right behind you even when you were inside with every door locked. One boy swore he saw a figure standing in the tree line, tall, maybe 7 feet, body thin like cloth stretched over wire. It didn't move. It just turned its head slightly and the whistling stopped. Then, in perfect mimicry of the boy's own voice, it called his name. After that, the county went still. People avoided the woods, left their porch lights burning until dawn. Hunters packed up early. Dogs refused to go outside after dark. But there were more disappearances. A hiker's backpack found hanging 30 feet up a tree, its straps tied in knots too tight for human hands. A mail carrier's truck idling in the middle of a gravel road. Driver's door open, radio hissing with what sounded like faint breathing. The deputy who responded said he followed the footprints into the woods until the track simply stopped mid-stride, as if the man had stepped into the air. Then he heard the whistling, faint just beyond the trees, and realized it wasn't coming from one direction, but from all around him. He ran without turning back. That winter brought fog thicker than anyone remembered. The locals said it came from the ground itself, seeping out of the hollers and clinging to the windows. It carried the smell of rain and something metallic underneath. The whistling became less frequent but stranger. Some nights it rose to a pitch that made the walls vibrate. Other nights it barely carried past the porch, soft and steady, like someone pacing just outside the light. People began finding dead birds on their doorsteps, lined up in neat rows. One farmer found every chicken in his coop standing upright, frozen stiff, eyes blackened as if boiled from within. An old man named Eli Sparks, one of the last who remembered the original Flatwoods story, told anyone who would listen that it had come back. He said the visitor from 1952 hadn't left. It had adapted. It learned how to breathe like us, he said, but it never learned how to stop listening. No one believed him until his daughter found his radio still playing static one morning and the chair by the window empty. They found his footprints leading to the edge of the woods, and beside them, another set, narrow, sharp, and long, pressed deep enough to leave scorch marks where they touched the frost. The sheriff organized a search with local volunteers. They found nothing for hours. Then one of them, a young deputy named Harris, heard the sound. It started faint, a distant whistle cutting through the cold air, then grew clearer, closer. The others stopped listening. The pitch shifted, matching the pattern of their walkie-talkie beeps. Then the voice came through the radio, soft but distinct. You shouldn't have followed the sound. Static swallowed the rest. They found Harris's flashlight later, still on. beam aimed upward into branches that had been stripped bare of bark. Above it, caught on a limb, fluttered a scrap of fabric that looked like skin but wasn't. Too thin, translucent, shot through with something that shimmered when light hit it. After that, no one searched the woods again. By spring, people began hearing the whistle in other towns. Burnsville, Frametown, even as far as Heaters. Always the same time, just before dawn, when the fog sits low and the world feels like it's holding its breath. The tone never changes, but the rhythm does. Slow when it's far, faster when it's close. Some say it uses the fog to travel, following the water vapor like veins through the hills. Others think it's not a creature at all, but a sound, a living frequency that carries memory, feeding on whoever listens too long. In 2022, a man named Jonah Price uploaded a recording to a local Facebook group. He claimed it was proof of the Whistler. The audio starts with distant wind and night insects. Then, faintly, a single note rising. It repeats, closer each time. Then the recorder picks up something like static or breathing. Finally, a whisper. Jonah's own voice saying, "Who's there?" A pause. Then another voice answers, using the exact same tone, the exact same words. "Who's there?" The file ends with a sharp pop of feedback. Jonah's account went offline that night. His family found his phone in the woods 2 days later, still recording. The last minute was nothing but silence. And then faintly, just before it cuts out, a whistle low and trembling, moving away, as though something tall was walking deeper into the trees, no longer hiding. Now, the people of Flatwoods keep their windows sealed with towels on foggy nights. The children are told never to whistle after dark, not even to call for the dog. The sound travels too far, carries too much weight. The old-timers say it's not hunting, it's listening, searching for the ones who still remember its name. And if it ever hears you answer its tune, it learns your rhythm, your voice, your breath. Some nights, when the fog rolls thick down the valley, the hills begin to hum again. The crickets stop. The air feels electric, and from somewhere deep in the woods, a single note cuts the silence. Long, rising, familiar. It moves closer, mimicking your heartbeat, the way breath fogs on cold glass. It waits for you to respond. And if you do, if you let even one note slip from your lips, the sound won't come from the woods anymore. It'll come from just behind you. They say the hills kept the sound even after everyone stopped talking about it. The forests soaked it in the way the ground soaks rain, slowly, quietly, until it becomes part of the land. The Whistler didn't vanish. It just went still, the way a predator does when it knows the prey has started watching. For nearly a year, there were no reports. No missing hunters, no strange noises, no midnight calls. Flatwoods slept, or at least pretended to. The silence almost felt safe. But silence in those hills never lasts long. It started again the following November. A pair of road workers were repairing guardrails along Route 19 just outside town when they heard the whistle drift up from the gorge. They said it was faint at first, rising in time with the sound of their drills, matching the rhythm exactly. Then it changed pitch, deepening, widening, until it felt less like sound and more like vibration. One of them turned to look over the edge. He said the fog was climbing from the creek, moving against the wind. He called for his partner, but by the time he turned back, the man was gone. His tool belt lay in the mud, still humming with the leftover tremor of the drill. The sheriff's department searched for 2 days before calling it accidental fall. But the second worker quit that same week, leaving a note that said only, "It wasn't gravity." Around that time, residents began finding their outdoor cameras drained of power every morning. Batteries dead, footage corrupted like something pulsed through the wires overnight. One clip that did survive showed the porch light flickering, fog crawling across the lens. For a few seconds, Old Mill Road doesn't show up right on the GPS anymore. It forks off from Highway 64 somewhere between Lenoir and Taylorsville, but the signs have all been taken down. The asphalt is cracked, lined with trees that lean too close, their branches interlocking overhead like they're trying to keep something in rather than out. People who've lived there long enough don't drive it after sundown. They say the road bends time in strange ways. Headlights flicker, watches stop, and engines stall without reason. But the real reason they avoid it has nothing to do with the terrain. It's because of the girl in the red dress. The earliest story came from a truck driver in 1979. He was hauling timber down from the Blue Ridge when a figure appeared in the middle of the road just after midnight. He slammed the brakes, swerving hard enough to tip the trailer onto the shoulder. When he jumped out, the night was dead quiet. The only sound was the soft dripping of rain from the trees. Then he saw her. A girl standing about 30 feet away, facing him. Long black hair plastered to her skin, red dress torn at the hem, barefoot. Her face was pale and wrong, too smooth, almost featureless until she looked up. The eyes, he said later, were the kind that didn't belong to the living. Glassy, dark, with reflections that moved slower than her head. She didn't speak, didn't flinch. She just stared for a few seconds before turning and walking into the woods. He followed with his flashlight, but the beam cut out after a few steps, and the forest swallowed the sound of his own breathing. When he found the road again, it was dawn. His truck battery was dead, the clock frozen at 12:17 a.m. When the sheriff arrived, he pointed out that Old Mill Road hadn't connected to Highway 64 in years. The bridge had collapsed in the 60s. The driver's route log didn't make sense. It showed him miles away from where he was supposed to be. He quit trucking that same month. Locals say the girl appears whenever someone takes the wrong turn, a turn they swear wasn't there before. She's always the same. Red dress, drenched, hair, bare feet, standing at the curve where the old mill once stood before it burned down in 1943. The fire started in the lower level, near the dye vats. The red pigment used for fabrics was highly flammable, and when the vats burst, it ran like blood across the floor. 3 workers died, including a young seamstress named Clara May. Witnesses said they saw her at the window screaming as the building went up. Her fiancé tried to reach her, but the stairwell collapsed. When they found what was left of her, her hands were clutching a scrap of red fabric melted into her skin. The local paper printed the photo for one day before it was pulled for being too disturbing. After the fire, the town sealed off the road leading to the mill. For decades, it stayed that way, until a few hikers from Asheville decided to explore the ruins. They followed an old map, but what they found wasn't the overgrown foundation everyone expected. The structure was still there, blackened, half standing, as if frozen in the moment before collapse. Inside, they found tables covered in dust, tools rusted but undisturbed, and footprints in the ash, small, bare, leading up the stairs that shouldn't have existed anymore. One of the hikers recorded video on his phone. You can hear him whispering, asking if anyone else smells smoke. Then the footage distorts. A figure in a red dress passes between the frames, too fast to focus on. The sound cuts out, replaced by the faint hum of what could be humming or crying. The video ends abruptly. They made it back to their car an hour later, but none of them could explain why their watches all read different times. The timestamps on the phone were dated 42 years earlier. In 2005, a mechanic from Taylorsville claimed he picked her up during a thunderstorm. He said she was standing under a tree, soaked, shaking, and asked for a ride to town. Her voice was small, almost childlike. She gave him directions that led down Old Mill Road. Halfway there, she asked if he'd ever heard the fire bells ring at night. When he turned to look, the seat beside him was empty, but the passenger door was still locked from the inside. The smell of burnt fabric lingered for days. He swore he'd never gone near that part of the county again. His truck still carried faint scorch marks on the seatbelt, shaped like fingerprints. Last year, 2 teenagers were driving home from a party when they took a wrong turn near the quarry. The dash cam caught everything. The footage shows the car winding through thick fog before a pale figure steps into the headlights. The girl. She lifts one arm slowly, pointing toward the forest. The driver shouts, slams the brakes. The camera jerks, and when it steadies, there's no one on the road. But for exactly 7 seconds, a reflection appears in the rearview mirror. The back seat, where something in red sits perfectly still. The car's internal temperature dropped 10 degrees, the sensor flashing cold warnings. The teens made it out of the forest, but crashed at the intersection. When the police reviewed the footage, those 7 seconds were missing entirely, replaced by static and faint rhythmic tapping, like fingers drumming against glass. There's a pattern in every account. The time always freezes near 12:17 a.m., and every witness reports the smell of burning dye, metallic and sweet. Locals say if you stop near the ruins, you'll sometimes hear the mill's siren go off deep in the woods, a sound no one's been able to trace. Hikers who follow it vanish in the fog. Only their tire tracks return to the asphalt. The county map still shows Old Mill Road as closed, flood damage. But when the moon is low, drivers swear they can see fresh pavement shimmering beyond the barrier and a figure waiting just beyond the bend. Sometimes she waves, sometimes she just stands there. But once, a driver claimed she smiled, faintly, almost grateful, before the air turned sharp with the smell of smoke and his headlights flickered out. When he came to, his car was parked outside his home, engine off, door open. The clock on the dashboard read 12:17 a.m. exactly. His phone camera was on, recording the empty passenger seat. In the faint reflection of the window, a red dress fluttered, as if someone had just stepped out. They say the girl doesn't haunt the mill anymore. The road is her grave now. And when the fog drifts down from the mountains, it stains the asphalt the color of rust. Or maybe, under the right light, the color of something that once ran red and hot and never cooled completely. Every November, the town marks the anniversary of the fire, though no one visits the ruins. The memorial cross on Highway 64 keeps disappearing, always found again miles down Old Mill Road, lying flat, scorched at the base. The sheriff's office still takes the occasional call, a driver reporting a girl walking alone in the dark. The officers never find anyone, but sometimes, when the radio static clears, dispatch catches a single voice cutting through. A young woman's, trembling, saying the same words over and over. "It's too hot. Please get me out." And then nothing but the sound of distant bells, ringing from somewhere that shouldn't exist anymore. For months after the last sighting, Old Mill Road stayed quiet again. The fog grew lighter and the nights felt almost normal. But the peace in places like that is never real. It's a pause, the kind that comes right before something starts breathing again. Around March, new calls began coming into the sheriff's office. Static-filled 911 recordings, all from drivers who claimed to be lost somewhere between Taylorsville and the Ridge. Each call ended the same way: silence, followed by a soft humming in the background. When technicians cleaned the audio, they found the same faint melody under everyone. A woman's voice humming the rhythm of an old hymn called "Bringing in the Sheaves." It was the same song Clara May used to sing at the mill's Sunday gatherings, the one her fiancé mentioned in his obituary decades earlier. One recording stood out. A man's voice trembled through the line. "There's a girl here on the road. She..." Then the call cut off. Dispatch tracked the phone's location to a spot 5 Blue Hollow sits deep in the belly of Kentucky, a valley the sun barely reaches, shadowed by limestone ridges and forests so dense they swallow echoes. The old mining road still cuts through it, narrow and crumbling, its yellow lines long faded into gray. Locals say if you drive that stretch at night, keep your eyes off the tree line and your windows closed, because sometimes, just beyond the headlights, a dim orange glow will appear, swaying steady, like someone walking the shoulder with a lantern. They call him the Lantern Man, and they say if you see him, don't stop, don't slow down, and for God's sake, don't look at his face. The first reports go back to the 1930s, when Blue Hollow was a coal camp. Miners worked double shifts in tunnels that ran beneath the valley floor, chasing veins of black rock that burned hot and dirty. One winter, a fire broke out underground, a methane pocket that ignited without warning. It spread fast, trapping 14 men inside. Rescue crews worked for 3 days before sealing the entrance. The air was too poisonous, the smoke too thick. They said some of the men tried to dig upward toward the surface, leaving pick marks in the stone. None made it out. The mine was abandoned, the shaft collapsed, and the town emptied soon after. But people who stayed claimed the light from the tunnels never really went out. On quiet nights, a faint glow shimmered beneath the ground, as if something still burned there. The first Lantern Man sighting came in 1954. A farmer named Reed was driving through the hollow when his truck's engine sputtered and died. He climbed out, flashlight in hand, and saw a dim light flickering through the fog. Thinking it was another driver, he called out, but the light didn't move. It just hovered there, about 50 yards ahead. Then it started swaying side to side, slow, rhythmic, almost like someone walking. He shouted again, but this time the light stopped. A smell rolled over him, thick and metallic like wet ash. The ground beneath his boots felt warm. He took one step forward and heard something move in the dark, a slow dragging sound like metal scraping stone. Then the light began to rise, higher and higher, until it hung 10 feet off the ground, pulsing faintly. He ran. When he reached the top of the hill, he looked back one last time. The light had followed him to the edge of the road, hovering still, and in its glow, he swore he saw a face, charred black, eyes hollow, mouth wide open as if still trying to scream. He told the sheriff the next morning, but they chalked it up to fog and fatigue. A week later, his barn burned down. No sign of lightning, no accident they could find. In the ash, investigators found a lantern, melted into the floorboards. Reed swore he'd never owned one. Over the years, the sightings multiplied. Always the same description, a dim orange lantern moving just ahead of a driver or a hiker. Sometimes it would follow from a distance, sometimes appear right beside the car window, keeping pace no matter how fast they drove. Radios cut out, engines stalled, and a low humming sound filled the air, like breath being drawn through stone. In the 60s, a group of teenagers dared each other to walk the road after midnight. They took a camera, snapping photos every few yards. Only one picture survived. It showed the dirt road empty, but a column of light stretched across the frame, bending in a perfect arc, ending in what looked like a hand reaching from the darkness. A preacher from a nearby town claimed the lantern man wasn't a ghost at all, but the spirit of the miners still trapped underground, a collective presence feeding off the fire that never went out. He held a midnight sermon in the hollow, praying over the mine entrance, reading from scripture. Witnesses said the ground trembled, and a red glow seeped from the cracks between the rocks. The preacher fell to his knees, clutching his chest, muttering that something below was still breathing. He left town 2 days later, his voice completely gone. In 1987, 2 highway workers were surveying the area for a new route. They pitched camp near the old mine's rim. Their last radio check was logged at 10:13 p.m. The next morning, their tent was empty, coffee still warm, lanterns missing. Search teams found their tracks leading down toward the sealed shaft. At the bottom was a hole burned through the concrete, circular, smooth, like glass. The air that came out was hot enough to melt plastic. Their gear was found 2 miles away, arranged in a neat circle around an unlit lantern. The metal frame was fused shut as though it had been in a furnace. The sheriff sealed the site again, this time with rebar and concrete. But that didn't stop the light. By the early 2000s, truckers began reporting it on their CB radios, a faint signal that broke into their frequency late at night. Always the same. A man's voice whispering coordinates, followed by static. Then the sound of something tapping, metal against metal, slow and deliberate. One driver said he followed the voice out of curiosity, thinking it was another truck in distress. The road wound down into the hollow, fog thick as smoke. Then the light appeared, swaying ahead of him. He tried to brake, but his pedal went soft. The truck coasted forward until the light vanished. When he stepped out, the road behind him was gone. Just open dirt and the black mouth of the forest. He turned back toward his cab and saw a lantern hanging from his mirror, glowing faintly. The handle was too hot to touch. When the sheriff found him hours later, he was sitting in the cab, eyes wide, hands clutching the wheel. The lantern had melted through the metal hood. Locals who live near Blue Hollow say the ground there hums on certain nights, a vibration you can feel in your teeth. Birds won't roost on the trees, and the grass grows in strange spirals, black at the edges. Some claim the fire that killed those miners never stopped. It just moved deeper, burning slow, turning the earth beneath into a furnace that breathes. The lantern man, they say, is the one who found his way out, or maybe the one who was left to wander while the rest burned. His light isn't meant to guide, it's meant to lure. Last winter, a storm knocked out power across the valley. The entire county went dark. Emergency crews took the back roads to reach a stranded family. The dash cam on one of the trucks recorded everything, the headlights cutting through the mist, the rain hitting the windshield. Then, just for a second, an orange light appeared ahead, swinging gently. The driver slowed, calling out to what he thought was another rescue vehicle. But as the light neared, it wasn't attached to anything. It floated at eye level, moving toward the truck. The driver's breathing quickened. You can hear it in the footage. Then something slammed the hood, and the truck's power cut out completely. For 10 seconds, the video is nothing but black. When the headlights flicked back on, the road was empty. No light, no figure. Just a deep scorch mark across the asphalt, glowing faintly, pulsing like an ember. The sheriff ordered the road closed again, but it doesn't matter. Blue Hollow has a way of finding you even when you avoid it. Drivers still report flickers of orange in their mirrors miles away, or the faint scent of coal smoke in the middle of clear air. One man said he saw the light reflected in a puddle on his driveway, though there was nothing around him but open fields. And there's a story that circulates now among the truckers, a CB frequency that no one claims to use. Active only between midnight and 3 a.m. They call it Channel 13.3. If you tune in, you might hear a voice whispering through the static, asking if anyone's out there. Sometimes, if you answer, the voice says, "I found the way up." Then the channel goes dead. A few days later, drivers report a dim orange glow in their mirrors, pacing their trucks down the highway until dawn. They say the Lantern Man isn't looking for vengeance anymore. He's looking for company. And the deeper the mines burn, the more restless the light becomes. Sometimes it flickers in two places at once, as though something beneath the ground is splitting open. The forest trembles, the air tastes like sulfur, and the sound of metal striking stone echoes faintly through the trees. If you ever find yourself on the Blue Hollow Road after midnight, and you see a light swing, there's a place in Western Virginia where the mountains fold in on themselves, forming a ridge so sharp the locals call it Devil's Backbone. The road that winds across it is narrow, coiled tight like a serpent's spine, with drops on either side that vanish into black forest. It's the kind of road that kills headlights with fog and bends sound until it feels like someone's whispering right behind you. Nobody builds houses there anymore. The last one burned down in 1989, and since then, only the Crying Thing has lived on the ridge. That's what they call it, the Crying Thing. Because if you stop your car at the wrong place or pull over to catch your breath, you'll hear it. A single sob, quiet at first, somewhere between a woman's voice and an animal's, then another, then closer. The first story they tell happened in 1963, when a newlywed couple, Mark and Lila Grayson, took that road after visiting family in Roanoke. A storm rolled in and they lost their way in the fog. They pulled over near a turn marked by a rusted sign that said Mile 13. According to the police report, Mark stepped out to check the tires and Lila stayed in the car. He called out something, but she couldn't hear him over the wind. Then faintly she heard someone crying, a sound so soft she thought it was a child. When she looked through the windshield, the fog had cleared just enough for her to see a figure standing behind the car. Bare feet, a white nightdress soaked through, long hair hanging over the face. The figure tilted its head to the side and the crying stopped. Then the fog rushed back in like breath. When the police found the car the next morning, the doors were open, headlights still on. Lila was gone. Mark was found 50 yards down the slope, neck broken, eyes wide, hands covering his ears. The report said the ground around him was wet, though it hadn't rained for hours. Over the decades, more stories piled up. Always at night, always near Mile 13. A hiker once found a clearing with a ring of stones in the center, burned black. He swore he saw footprints leading in circles, barefoot, small like a child's, but only one set. He followed them until the air turned heavy and the woods went silent. Then he heard it, soft crying, no direction, no echo. He dropped his flashlight, and when he picked it up again, the beam caught a pale shape between the trees. Just a shoulder at first, then a hand reaching toward the ground, twitching. He ran, left everything behind, and when rangers found his campsite, his sleeping bag was ripped open and filled with pine needles. They said it looked like someone had lain inside for days. Locals say the Crying Thing was once a girl named Eliza Ward, who lived on the ridge in the early 1900s. Her family was poor, and her father was cruel, a coal hauler who drank himself blind. One winter, the story goes, he locked her out of the house after a fight, told her to cry all you want. The devil's the only one who'll listen. When the snow came, she never went back in. They found her days later, frozen at the edge of the ravine, one hand pressed to the earth as if begging to be let in. The house burned that same night. Some said the fire started from her lantern tipping over in the storm. Others said she came back and set it herself. Either way, the wards were gone, and the ridge was never quiet again. Since then, drivers report headlights flickering when they pass mile 13, the radio fading into a low hum that almost sounds like someone weeping under their breath. Some nights fog thickens so fast it feels alive, pressing against windshields, creeping through vents, carrying a smell like old dirt and rain. If you roll your window down, you'll hear it clearer. A girl's sob. Sometimes it sounds far away, sometimes right next to your ear. Those who've seen her say she moves like she's underwater, slow, jerking, her head lolling as if the neck's too weak to hold it up. In 1997, a state trooper named Collins investigated after 3 teens vanished while driving home from a bonfire. He found their car near the overlook, engine running, doors open. Inside, everything was coated in a thin film of moisture like dew. The windshield wipers moved on their own, scraping across glass that wasn't wet. Collins called for backup but got only static. He shined his flashlight down the slope and saw what he thought was fabric, a torn white dress snagged on a branch. When he climbed down, he found it wasn't fabric at all but skin. A full layer, smooth and colorless like something shed. The air smelled sweet, almost like lilacs. When backup arrived, the trooper was sitting in the road shaking, saying over and over, "She was crying for me." He quit the force a week later. Now the legend has spread. Truckers won't drive that ridge at night. GPS signals glitch near the curve and phones pick up faint static that, when slowed down, sounds like a child humming a lullaby. Hunters claim to hear crying deep in the woods even at noon, though no animal makes that sound. There's one recording, leaked online a few years ago. A dash cam from a delivery van. The road ahead is empty, fog curling off the trees. Then a figure appears on the shoulder, barefoot, head bent. The driver slows down, rolls his window halfway, and you can hear it. That thin, trembling sob. "Are you okay?" he says. The figure lifts its head, and for a split second, you can see its face in the high beams. Mouth wide open, eyes like 2 holes in wet paper, sound ripping through the speaker so loud the camera distorts. The van jerks sideways. When the frame stabilizes, the road's empty. The driver was never found. Some people say she's still looking for her father. Others think she's looking for warmth, something to take her out of the cold. But there's another theory, that she doesn't cry out of sadness anymore. She cries to lure the living, to draw them closer so she can take their heat, their breath, their voices. Those who've heard her up close say their ears ring for days afterward, and in the quiet, they still hear her, faintly, like someone crying through walls. One stormy night last year, a ranger went to check for rock slides along the backbone. His dashcam caught him stopping near the curve, headlights cutting through the fog. He steps out, shining his flashlight on the road. The beam lands on something wet, small footprints leading into the trees. The audio picks up a faint sound. Crying, he whispers, "Hello?" and moves forward. The flashlight flickers once. Then the sound shifts, from soft sobs to gasping, wet breathing. The light jerks wildly, and the last frame shows a white blur rushing toward the camera. The feed cuts. They found his cruiser the next morning, doors open, radio still hissing. The inside of the windshield was streaked with handprints, small, pale, pressed from the outside. Now they've closed that stretch of road claiming rock erosion, but locals know better. On foggy nights, the crying still carries down the mountain, and people swear it's getting louder, closer to town. Some say she's learned to follow headlights, drawn to the heat of engines and the sound of breathing in confined spaces. Sometimes drivers coming off the ridge find condensation inside their cars, faint streaks across the glass as though someone had been leaning against it from the outside, listening. And once in a while, when the fog drifts down into the valley and everything goes still, people swear they hear her even in their homes, a thin sob at the edge of sleep, a voice pressed against the window, whispering through the glass. It's so cold. The whispers about Devil's Backbone never really stop. They just sink into the soil for a while before crawling back out. By early spring, the locals started somewhere along County Road 77 in rural Iowa, between 2 cornfields that stretch farther than headlights can reach, there's a patch of land where nothing grows. No one remembers when it first appeared. Some say the soil turned black after a crop duster went down in 1979. Others whisper it was older than the town itself. a wound the earth refuses to heal. Locals call it the humming field because of the sound. You don't hear it right away. At first it's just silence. That deep, open country kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. Then, if you stand long enough, the air begins to vibrate, low and steady, like something buried just beneath the surface is alive and breathing. The story starts with a farmer named Dale Whitlock. In the summer of '92, he was working late, mending a fence near the edge of his property when he heard it. That hum, steady and soft. He thought it was a generator or a swarm of bees, but when he checked, there was nothing. The sound didn't come from any direction. It just was. He said it made his bones feel hollow. The next morning, his dog was gone. The tracks led straight into the black soil of the humming field, then stopped. No drag marks, no signs of struggle, just clean earth pressed flat, like something had swallowed the ground around each paw print. A week later, Dale started getting headaches. He complained that every time he closed his eyes, he saw the field. Not how it looked, but how it sounded. People thought he was losing it until the same thing happened to a boy named Aaron 2 months later. He and his friends had been playing around the field at dusk, daring each other to step inside. They said the soil felt warm like skin, and the deeper you walked, the louder the hum got. When Aaron reached the center, his friends swore they saw the air shimmer around him, like heat off asphalt. Then he just dropped. Not collapsed, dropped straight down, like the ground had opened beneath him. They ran screaming back to town. Search teams combed every inch, found no hole, no body. Just the same even stretch of black dirt, humming softly under their boots. The field became a ghost story after that. People avoided it, but sometimes curiosity wins. Truckers stopping off the highway would park nearby, step out to stretch, and catch the hum in the distance. Faint, rhythmic, hypnotic. A few even described hearing it inside their heads, like a thought that wasn't theirs. The sound was said to change the longer you listened. First a vibration, then a tune. Faint, repetitive, almost like a lullaby. But there are no words in it. Just that low, endless melody that feels older than the wind. In 2003, an audio engineer from Des Moines named Rachel Ellison came to investigate after reading about it online. She brought recording equipment and camped near the site for 3 nights. Her journal, recovered later, described the sound's effect. The hum isn't mechanical. It's tonal, harmonic, layered, like multiple voices breathing in unison. Sometimes it syncs with my heartbeat. Sometimes it changes pitch when I speak. On the 3rd night, her recorder captured something new. Just past midnight, the frequency shifted. Beneath the hum, another sound emerged. Faint, like whispering. You couldn't make out the words, but it rose and fell like conversation. Then for 3 seconds, a clear voice broke through. It was her own, whispering, "I can hear you." She was found the next morning lying at the edge of the field, eyes open, mouth full of dirt. No heartbeat, but no sign of trauma. Her equipment still worked, but the recording from that night had been overwritten by static. Not white noise, a continuous tone, smooth and steady, perfectly pitched at 432 Hz. Engineers who analyzed it said it was almost too pure to be natural. Locals claim that after Rachel died, the hum got louder. Farmers miles away began hearing it in their silos, tractors, and even water pumps. The sound moved like it was searching for something. Birds avoided the sky above the field, flying wide arcs around it. And small animals found near the edges were sometimes missing eyes but not eaten, as if something had taken what it needed. The grass surrounding the patch grew in perfect circles, bending outward, away from the soil. No wind, no hands, just that slow curve, like the field was breathing. A few years later, a man named Carl Benton set up a wind turbine less than a mile away. Within a week, the blades began spinning at random, even without wind. The hum resonated through the metal, shaking the ground so hard his house cracked along the foundation. He called it a pulse, said it came every night around 2:17 a.m. He recorded one session before leaving the property for good. On the tape, you can hear the low hum building for nearly 2 minutes, then a voice whispering under it. Multiple voices, layered together, saying something that sounds like, "Come down." The turbine stopped working the same night. The next morning, he found the field had expanded by 6 feet. Satellite photos show the dark patch spreading slowly each year, swallowing the edge of the cornfields. It's subtle, almost like erosion, but farmers swear it moves in deliberate lines, forming patterns that look like spirals when seen from above. Crop dusters won't fly over it anymore because their altimeters go haywire, and pilots report hearing the hum even thousands of feet up, faint but unmistakable, threading through their headset audio. There's an old story buried deeper, older than the town. The Winnebago people spoke of a singing ground, a place where the earth carried the breath of the dead, a place not to walk when the moon was new. They said the soil there remembers sound, that the voices of the buried don't fade but echo through the roots until the land itself hums with their memory. Some elders said the humming field sits exactly where an old burial site once was, plowed over, forgotten, silenced, until the silence itself began to sing, and there are witnesses even now. A truck driver heading to Cedar Rapids last winter called 911, his voice shaking, claiming the road ahead was vibrating. He said the lights from his cab flickered with the hum, flashing in rhythm like a heartbeat. The operator told him to pull over. He said he couldn't, that his hands wouldn't move. The recording lasts 7 minutes, the sound building beneath his voice until it drowns him out. The last thing you can hear before the line goes dead is a faint whisper. "I'm listening." His truck was found idling on the side of the road, door open, radio still on. The frequency dial had spun to static, 432 hertz. Now no one lives within 2 miles of the field. The ground near it shakes sometimes lightly as if something deep below is stirring. Travelers still claim to hear the hum when they pass by on windless nights, like the sound is reaching up from beneath their tires. Some say if you stop your car, turn off the engine, and breathe slow enough, the hum matches your pulse. It syncs with your heartbeat until you can't tell where you end and it begins. A boy once dared his friend to sleep in the field for a night. He didn't come back. They found him sitting cross-legged at the center, eyes open, calm. He was humming the same tone, steady, perfect, and when they moved him, the hum didn't stop. It came from the soil beneath him, pulsing in time with his chest. His body was warm for days afterward, long after the coroner took him away. They say the humming field grows louder each decade, that someday it'll spread across all of County Road 77, filling the air with its endless tone. And when that happens, maybe it won't be humming anymore. Maybe it'll be speaking, or maybe it's already been speaking, and we just haven't learned to listen. Because if you stand there long enough, if you let the vibration climb through your bones and settle behind your eyes, the sound starts to form words, slow, patient, human. There's a narrow, winding road cutting through the woods outside of Charleston known as Pine Ridge Road, a forgotten stretch that locals avoid after sundown. It's the kind of place where trees lean in close like eavesdroppers, where the asphalt has cracked and buckled under decades of neglect, and where cell service dies the moment you pass the rusted bridge out sign. At the heart of that road's legend is a figure known only as the Lantern Man, a story whispered between gas station clerks and long-haul drivers, always with the same warning. If you see a dim orange light ahead of you on Pine Ridge, do not follow it. The first recorded encounter came from a highway repair crew in the late 1960s. They were sent out to assess storm damage after a rock slide. One of the men, Eddie Crowder, radioed the others saying he'd spotted a lantern ahead, someone waving for help near the bend. When the others arrived, they found Eddie's truck idling on the shoulder, his door hanging open, and a set of muddy footprints leading into the trees. The tracks ended 50 yards into the woods, just stopped in the middle of the mud, as though Eddie had been lifted straight off the ground. His body was never found. All they recovered was a dented metal thermos, still warm inside, lying beside a faint circle of soot where something had burned into the earth. Decades passed, but the sightings never stopped. Drivers report the same pattern, a dim orange glow up ahead, swaying back and forth like someone walking with a lantern. The light always appears at the same stretch, right before the old one-lane bridge that collapsed years ago. A few brave souls who approached said they saw a man standing there in suspenders and a wide-brimmed hat, his face hidden behind the glare of the lantern's glass. He never speaks, only turns slightly as though leading you forward. The moment you blink, he's gone, and when your eyes adjust again, you realize the bridge ahead no longer exists. More than one car has gone over that drop, found later in the creek below, mangled and half buried in silt. Locals say the Lantern Man was once a railroad worker from the early 1900s named Elias Reed. He worked the Pine Ridge line when a dynamite mishap killed 5 men and left him burned and blinded. His job was to signal trains at night using a kerosene lamp, but on the night of the explosion, his lantern was found smashed beside the tracks, still burning. They buried him in an unmarked grave near the old bridge, and soon after, the stories began. Travelers seeing a glowing light moving through the trees, a steady rhythmic swing as if someone were still guiding the trains that never came. One of the more recent incidents happened in 2015, caught on a dash cam. A driver named Ruth Haley was heading home from a late shift at a diner when her headlights caught the faint orange shimmer ahead. She slowed down, thinking maybe it was a hunter or someone in trouble. The light drifted toward the center of the road, swaying in a slow arc, then paused directly in front of her car. Her dashboard camera flickered with static, the radio cut out, and for a moment she swore she saw a man's silhouette standing there. His face hollow, eyes glowing with the same dull light as his lantern. Then nothing. When the static cleared, the light was gone, and she was parked inches from the broken edge of the missing bridge. The police who reviewed the footage saw only the flickering light and a shadow, but no human figure. Ruth left town 2 weeks later and never returned. Today, Pine Ridge Road is mostly abandoned, its cracks filled with weeds and moss. Yet those who wander too close at night still claim to see the Lantern Man. Some say the glow moves along the tree line, as if searching for someone. Others hear faint tapping like metal striking wood from deep within the forest. Hunters talk about their flashlights dimming for no reason, the world around them going soundless except for a faint hiss, like a lantern wick catching flame. And on nights when the fog rolls in thick over the ridge, a soft orange light sometimes appears where the bridge used to be, swaying gently above the black water, as if waiting for another lost traveler to follow it, straight into the dark. In 2021, a pair of paranormal investigators from Morgantown, Todd and Lacey Givens, decided to film a documentary segment about Pine Ridge Road for their YouTube channel. Echoes Beyond the Veil. They arrived near dusk, their SUV loaded with cameras, EMF meters, and a thermal drone. Todd laughed as he mounted the GoPro to his shoulder, but Lacey couldn't shake the feeling that the forest around them was watching. The air was thick and still, the smell of wet pine hanging heavy, and even the cicadas seemed to have gone silent. They followed the cracked asphalt until they reached the section where the bridge once stood. There was only a gap now, a 30-foot drop to the creek below. Across the ravine, Todd noticed what looked like a faint glimmer through the fog. "You see that?" he whispered. The light swayed once, twice, then steadied. The camera footage recovered later would show the glow drifting toward them, pulsing rhythmically, growing brighter as it came. Lacey's voice trembled. "That's not a reflection." Todd stepped forward, raising his flashlight, calling out, "Hello? Are you hurt?" The light paused. Then all at once, every piece of their equipment went dead. Their mics, recorders, even the drone hovering above. The footage glitched, freezing on a single frame. A tall figure holding what looked like a lantern, half of its face illuminated, the other half a blur of darkness. Authorities found the pair's SUV abandoned at the roadside the next morning, doors open, keys still in the ignition. The only thing inside was the shattered GoPro, its battery still warm, and a faint scorched circle on the passenger seat, shaped like the bottom of an old kerosene lamp. Lacey's body was found 2 days later downstream, wedged between stones, her eyes wide open as if staring into the water. Todd was never recovered. Now locals say the Lantern Man has changed. His glow is brighter, flickering with a deeper hue, almost red. People claim to hear whispers now, not just the creak of a swinging lamp, but a raspy, guttural voice calling names, sometimes their own. Park rangers who patrol nearby swear they've seen the outline of 2 figures beside the light. One tall, one smaller, both turning slowly toward the sound of engines approaching. The legend has evolved, but one thing remains constant. Each time someone vanishes on Pine Ridge Road, the lantern burns a little longer, as if feeding on the fear and curiosity of those who come searching for the truth. And when the fog drifts low across the ravine, the air smells faintly of kerosene, and the distant hiss of a flame can be heard, waiting for the next traveler to mistake its warmth for safety. Locals say that when the fog grows thick enough to muffle even the crickets, you can hear the Lantern Man pacing the ravine, slow, deliberate steps on gravel, boots scraping stone, the faint clink of metal against glass as if he's adjusting his lantern. Hunters have woken in their blinds to that sound, a dim glow weaving between the trees, and by the time they draw their rifles, the light blinks out, leaving only the smell of burnt oil in the air. Some who've encountered it up close describe something stranger, the way time seems to slip. Watches stop. Phone clocks freeze. The forest itself feels suspended in one long, breathless moment, as if everything waits for you to take that one fatal step toward the glow. One winter night, a snowplow driver named Martin Lowe reported something that still haunts him. He was clearing ice along Route 17 near the Pine Ridge Cutoff when his high beams caught what looked like an orange flare ahead. Assuming a stranded car, he slowed down, but the light moved into the center of the road, swinging in slow arcs. He honked, rolled down his window to shout, but the air that entered the cab was wrong, sharp and metallic, like burning wires. The figure holding the lantern lifted it higher, and for a split second, Martin saw its face reflected in his windshield. Skin melted and blackened, eyes blank white, mouth frozen mid-scream. The plow's engine died instantly. When he came to his senses minutes later, the road was empty. His dashcam had stopped recording at 3:03 a.m., the exact time Elias Reed's work log had ended on the night of the explosion in 1907. Even now, the county refuses to reopen that stretch of Pine Ridge Road, citing erosion risks. But people know the truth. Deputies still respond to phantom distress calls routed through old emergency frequencies, their coordinates always tracing back to the collapsed bridge. Every so often, hikers find old railway nails sticking up from the mud, still hot to the touch, as if freshly forged. And when the moon is low and the air hangs heavy with mist, you can stand at the ridge's edge and see the lantern burning faintly in the distance, swaying, patient, eternal. Some say the Lantern Man isn't warning travelers anymore. He's leading them, one by one, to join the others who disappeared before. His lost crew, trapped between the sparks of an unfinished job and the silence of a road that remembers. Bell Creek Road winds through a forgotten pocket of the Appalachian Hills, a stretch so narrow that two cars can barely pass without scraping mirrors. The trees hang close here, heavy with moss, their branches twisting over the asphalt like skeletal arms trying to pull it back into the soil. Locals say the forest hums at night, a low vibration in the air that you don't so much hear as feel in your chest. For generations, the people of Harlan County have spoken in hushed tones about what lives near that road. Not spirits of the dead, but something older, something that was never human to begin with. They call them the Hollow Children. The earliest stories date back to the 1930s, when a flood wiped out an entire mining camp that sat along Bell Creek. Dozens drowned when the dam upstream collapsed, their shanties swept into the ravine. When the water receded, rescue teams found most of the bodies tangled in debris, all except the miners' families. The children, they said, had simply vanished. Weeks later, farmers began reporting strange footprints near their property. Small, barefoot tracks that ended abruptly at the tree line. One farmer swore he woke one night to the sound of giggling outside his window, soft and breathy, followed by fingernails tapping gently against the glass. Over the years, the legend evolved. Hikers claimed to see small figures darting through the fog, their outlines too quick, too pale. One woman who lived alone near Bell Creek said she found her porch covered in tiny handprints every morning after a storm, as if something had crawled up from the earth to peer inside. Hunters who ventured too far reported hearing children singing in the woods, off-key, repeating old nursery rhymes no one had taught for decades. When they tried to record it, the audio came back warped, voices overlapping, laughter bending into shrill static. In 1998, a man named George Willard disappeared while driving home from his night shift at a sawmill. His car was found on Bell Creek Road, lights still on, door open, engine running. The inside of the windshield was covered in condensation, except for 3 small handprints smeared across the glass. Prints too small for any adult. The sheriff's department closed the case, citing environmental exposure as the cause of death, but no body was ever recovered. Locals whispered that the hollow children had taken him. There's a story told by an EMT who responded to that call, though he never put it in his report. He said that while waiting for backup, he heard someone crying near the creek bed. He followed the sound with his flashlight, and there, half submerged in the mud, he saw a child. Pale skin, long wet hair. The boy didn't blink, didn't shiver, just stared up at him and whispered, "You shouldn't have come." When the EMT stumbled back, the figure slipped beneath the water without a ripple. Since then, Bell Creek Road has become something of a dare among teenagers, a midnight test of courage. Most go and come back laughing, their only reward a shaky phone video of the fog. But a few haven't been so lucky. In 2016, 3 friends from Harlan High recorded themselves walking the road after dark. Their footage, later found on one of their phones, showed them joking, teasing each other, until the tone shifted. The camera caught faint movement behind them, shapes low to the ground, moving on all fours. One of the boys muttered, "Did you hear that?" Before the audio cut out completely. The phone was discovered days later, wedged in a tree stump beside the creek, still recording, battery drained. The last frame shows a blurred image of a child's face, eyes entirely black. Mouth open too wide, a streak of water running down its cheek like it was crying mud. Today, even during the day, Bell Creek feels wrong. The air carries a damp, sweet smell, like decay and river silt. Travelers report their car radios picking up faint singing as they approach the bridge, a lullaby with no source. Hunters leave offerings of toys or candy at the edge of the woods, hoping to appease whatever still lingers there. And sometimes, when the fog grows thick enough to erase the road from view, drivers say they see small figures standing on the shoulder, still, silent, their heads tilted slightly as if listening. If you stop long enough to roll your window down, you might hear them too, a chorus of faint voices rising from the dark creek bed, whispering your name in perfect unison. No one knows where the hollow children came from or what they want, but everyone who's lived near Bell Creek agrees on one thing. Whatever drowned in those floodwaters all those years ago didn't stay buried. And when the mist rolls up from the valley and the night grows quiet enough to hear your own breath, you'll swear you can feel tiny, cold fingers pressing against the glass, waiting to be let back in. There was a winter storm in 2020 that made Bell Creek Road nearly impassable, ice glazing the power lines, branches snapping under the weight of snow, the forest pressing in tighter than ever. That was when it happened again. A postal worker named Aaron Pierce, taking a detour home, ignored the barricades and pushed his Jeep through the slush. He managed to call dispatch once, breathless, saying he saw kids in the road. The signal dropped after that. Search teams found his Jeep idling against a tree, headlights washing the creek in pale light. The driver's door was open, but the snow on the seat was melted, as though someone had just climbed out moments before they arrived. The only tracks outside were small, bare footprints, spaced too close together, leading down the embankment and vanishing at the frozen edge of the water. A few days later, the county thawed enough for recovery divers to comb the creek. They found no body, but they did find something lodged beneath a submerged root. A child's wooden toy horse, perfectly preserved despite the current. When the divers surfaced with it, the air temperature dropped 10 degrees, and one of them swore he heard laughter echoing across the trees, thin, distant, and full of static. The toy disappeared from the evidence locker 2 nights later. People say that since that storm, the hollow children have become bolder. Motorists now claim to see them in daylight, pale shapes crouching at the edge of the road, watching silently as cars pass. Some say the children knock on doors in nearby houses after sunset, their shadows slipping through keyholes, their voices whispering from drains. Dogs won't go near Bell Creek anymore. They just whine and back away, hackles raised, as if something ancient and wrong lingers just beyond the trees. The most chilling account came from a retired teacher named Martha Lee, who lived half a mile from the old floodplain. She said they came to her porch one foggy morning in March. She saw their outlines through the mist, half a dozen small figures dripping wet, their heads tilted in unison. They didn't speak, only stood there as the fog thickened around them. Then one of them reached out, placing a pale hand against her window. Martha said she felt the cold seep through the glass into her skin. When she blinked, they were gone, but the imprint of that hand remained, even after she scrubbed it with bleach. Martha moved away the next week, but the new tenants reported the same thing, tiny, wet handprints appearing on the inside of their windows after every rainfall. The local sheriff refuses to take new reports, claiming it's kids playing pranks, but the old-timers in town know better. They say the hollow children aren't ghosts, they're what's left of something much older. Something the flood uncovered and the children became when it took them. And sometimes, on nights when the air hangs heavy with mist and the creek runs low, you can stand at the bend and hear it, a faint lullaby floating from the water, sung in voices that are too many and too small, echoing through the hollow as if the woods themselves are humming along. Those who linger too long say they feel tugging at their sleeves, small hands brushing their legs, and if they run, they swear the sound follows, soft laughter fading into the dark, until the road swallows it whole. The locals have a warning now, painted in red on the rusted bridge sign at the road's entrance. Don't stop for the children. Because those who do are never truly found, only remembered. When the creek rises again, and another voice joins the lullaby beneath the hills. They say the hollow children have started wandering farther from the creek now. Drivers heading into town at dawn catch glimpses of them standing in fields, motionless and pale as fog, their heads tilted toward the sound of engines. One farmer, Henry Cobb, swore he saw them one morning just beyond his fence line, 5 of them, shoulder to shoulder in the frost, their feet bare on the frozen ground. He blinked, and they were gone. But when he stepped outside, he found small patches of melted snow, as though something warm had stood there moments before. He stopped tending that field after that, said the soil turned sour, that nothing grew right anymore. Weeks later, strange reports began trickling in from the nearby elementary school. Children were waking up in class, dazed, claiming they had seen other kids outside the windows, faces pressed against the glass during lessons, smiling and waving before fading into the reflection. One teacher dismissed it until she stayed late one evening grading papers. As dusk fell, she caught a glimpse of movement outside. At first, she thought it was her own reflection, until she realized the face in the window wasn't hers. It was smaller, younger, eyes like pools of ink, mouth curved upward in a smile too still, too deliberate. She ran, leaving the lights on, and when the janitor arrived later, he found wet footprints across the tiled hallway, leading straight to the door and ending there.